All right. So I was reading this article, I guess, by Jordan Carney. So essentially, there's going to be some sort of judiciary hearing on rulings related to child pornography or pedophiles, basically. And let's see. You have a consistent pattern of giving child porn offenders light sentences. So they kind of do this around here. See, the clerk in Benton County and some of the judges, they know that there's people that are they have discussions about their problem, and then they have like behind the scenes agreements to have lighter sentences. And then there's like groups and there's law groups, lawyers and judges and DAs and stuff, and clerks that are like pedophile sympathizers. And that they call it law club. Most of them at some point would have like molested a kid in front of a camera to access dark web to do their like Columbine finding the like D&D nerd Columbine killer in high school shit, and teachers and shit, and principals. And so when they do that, essentially the like Columbine kind of guys, they end up like getting those and they shove them in their face. And so the dark web, essentially the tech nerds, you know, this stuff has always just been the dark web, what I'm going to explain. It's always been this way where they do like a major hack, and then if they get busted, they essentially get charged with a lesser charge or something. And so this is kind of what like the pedophilia stuff is. It operates kind of on a similar kind of idea. And these judges and lawyers, once they get into that voyeur site that they look at everybody on, they essentially adhere to the same idea. So this would probably be, that's what it is around here. Let's see, it's in Missouri or something. It doesn't say where the court is. It doesn't state where the I mean, this is, well, who knows? I mean, it might be, she might have done that. But this what I'm talking about here is like where this is what it is around here. Okay, so whether she's involved with that, I don't really know. The whole idea is that around here, this is what, you know, I see this stuff, and here's the reasonings why they do that stuff around here. I guess there's other aspects too. It's like, a lot of times it's like, in the dark web, the cops, when they touch a kid, they turn into psychos. Because these mopey guys, like, they get them to like fuck a kid. Instead, like, see, the cops, they'll they'll like touch, and then they won't get into that voyeur cycle. And then the pedophiles, like, they basically get them to like actually have sex with a child, and then these like mopey kind of tech psycho guys in the area like shoves in their face and causes them to go psycho. And then this is what happens. Then they just go fucking psycho with them all the fucking time, okay? And so then that eventually pushes the pedophile into agreeing to, they basically like have so much bombardment constantly on them that essentially they place out something they could be busted for that's lesser. And that's the other kind of thing that happens around here. So a lot of times there's like pre-agreements that gets the pedophile to actually make available their stuff. That might be an explanation to that stuff also. See, this law stuff is common everywhere. And so nowadays it's like the lesser of two evils is kind of an aspect to a lot of like criminal stuff, because everybody moved online. And so the law enforcement, they essentially they push people into making evidence to be busting them. And so it's a horrible, bad situation. But I mean, this might be an explanation to why there's lighter sentences and stuff like that. Also, it's that without the avenue of the potential for an agreement of lighter sentences, then the pedophile won't have the evidence placed out there to be busted with. Because the tech nerds, you know, the tech nerds take a different approach to pedophiles. They like to fuck with their brain. They like to fuck with them. Okay, so that kind of plays into that shit too. But the cops, they're like psycho. The nerds, they're psycho-y and like they call it story braining or psychoping. They fuck with them in different ways. But all of it kind of focuses on when people start being blatant about pedophilia. In the regular kind of hacker world, see, there's like a pedophile world that they have to. So to get in the pedophile dark web, you gotta do these satanic prairies, okay? That is where that's like the rainbow gatherings. We gotta be like a part at the rainbow gathering. Usually a group shows up and does like a satanic prairie. Those people, they're in pedophile net. The rest of everybody, the tech nerds, the touching the kid stuff, a lot of people have done that. But when you fuck a kid, then that's basically being blatant in what is the regular hacker dark web. That includes like the voyeur sites and shit. And see, these law club people that use that, they eventually, see, this is literally how it works with that voyeur site. You do the least, then you have to do the most eventually, the satanic prairie kind of stuff. And so, this is basically the complex dynamic of what this dark web blackmails produced in the law world. So, lighter sentences on child pornography. Child pornography ends up being where it's like Well, I mean, you see, the Duggar guy just had child pornography, and then he got like 30 years. And so that's where there's kind of changes nowadays. He probably would have expected like 6 months, a year, or something like that. That is what, like, all the like weird. But see, here's the reality: those Christian people, they do those camps, and you see that the lesser charge was like 30 years. And so this is where, without any real confirmation, the reality is that the lesser charge is usually what they get convicted of. And that then, based on the extremeness of what they did, the lesser sentence is a representation of the extremeness. So, if you had like a pedo porn pig and got like 6 months, then it probably means that you didn't really actually do a whole lot really bad. But if you get 30 years, then it potentially means that weird Christian fundamentalists, they do that stuff. They might have done some stuff really bad. And so that is like where, a lot of that shit is dictated by this anonymous morality kind of. They have a morality, a darknet morality world that's a little different than the rest of the world, but it operates on those ideas. So, the whole idea is that she's probably going to be made Supreme Court. So that's where, okay, they're going to bring up being nice to stupid little pedophiles, okay, and that probably, black people aren't allowed in that law club stuff. It's kind of Nazi based. So a lot of times women are a little more understanding of children or people being pedophile. A lot of times people are a little more understanding or something like that. That's probably what it really is with that lady. She's black. This is how I know that not too many black people ever make it into the dark web kind of stuff that I'm talking about. It's kind of like the dark web is hijacked by, it's like hijacking a website. The dark web that they use is kind of hijacked by white supremacy. So for that lady, if people are going to talk shit about her having some sympathy, bad, for pedophiles, the reality is that she could do what like all the cops do, which is to like, a lot of them, like, have like sympathy for these pedophiles at first, and then they get fucked with by them, and then by the end, Satan builds them into psychos and the pedophiles. It's just what happens in the dark web, okay? They end up hating those people at the end. They do. See, around here, the cops were essentially, as long as they were like reformed, then they would get cops helping them from the dark web vigilante kind of stuff. And then in the dark web, they would get pedo love. And so then over time, that turns into massive psyop manipulations. And then a lot of them end up blackmailing worse. And then, like, the whole idea is that the lesser offenders the pedophile world that they get into, the voyeur site, the Moby Tech psycho sick fucks that are always fucking kids and shit and being a psycho and shit, those are the people that that like that run their pedophile society. And that is like where, to get pedo love means that you're getting the pedophile society love. And that what that does is that attempts to manipulate people into doing more pedophilia. And so that is where a lot of the things that these pedophiles used to operate on an inner-policing society. So the things that has changed in a long time, it used to be the people that were like the most reformed, I guess. The people that were most reformed used to be like the leaders over all of that. And then that's where everybody would have to be very minimal about that. And that process on dark web used to work in ways. I mean, 10 years ago, these Anon hackers that are idealistic, they would have relied on help from an older pedo society in a hacking way for idealistic reasons, because they would be built with the most worst, like little stupid Mopey, being shoved in prisons for the rest of their life. And that then if they reformed, then their sins of the past would be washed away. And so that has ended. And so what's happened is that that whole world is turned upside down. And now the hackers are constantly like focused on them like the cops would be in a slightly different kind of way. And so this is where there's a real push to be getting everybody into, because see, these cops are used to these lesser pedophiles helping them with the cyber shit. I mean, in the 2000 era, the lesser pedos would be who the cops would recruit as like online informant helpers and hacking helpers, kind of. And so those people have been replaced by raging fucking psychotic pedophile tech psychos. And so they emulate the same stuff, but they are completely almost diametric in a psychology to what they're used to in the past. And so this affects the law club in the way that the law used to do stuff, because in ways they would help keep hackers and stuff out of the computers at like the courthouse and stuff like that. And so this is where the norm is still kind of what these judges and cops and DAs and clerks, this is what they're still used to this stuff. And that is being exploited because basically the top pedophiles have all the hacking tools, and that nobody gives cops and judges and shit hacking tools in the regular hacker world. They always end up taking the pedophile tech psychopath, the path, to be getting those. So, I mean, there's other avenues. The whole idea is that there's a whole string of idealistic Annans that aren't pedophiles that probably should be replacing their normal go-to. See, their world operates on the top person is the most reformed, horrible hacker. In the idealistic one, it's usually the one that makes the video. The one that makes the video is usually the one that probably probably hacked in Pentagon or something in the past, and then had to never do that type of extreme hacking ever again. And then the ones that are most logical and rational about it, because it's like an obsession addiction world. That is where they usually kind of make the video for being the best reformed hacker. It kind of worked. I mean, they essentially kind of ripped off what the pedophiles used to do in a societal structuring way. That is kind of where the Democrats, they attempt to find the most idealistic, least abusive hacker, one that controls themselves kind of stuff. And then, since they're addicts, if you give them some sort of government authority, then they'll go crazy and they'll know how to do all that stuff without having to bring in people that should be in prison, okay? I mean, the hacking stuff is bad, but for those people, it's like, look how I breached it. And then it's over. Now, there's nothing really that fucking important in any of that shit. Okay? For them, it's about figuring out how to break through the IT management. It's like a battle. I mean, this is the difference. This is where there's probably people that need to have a comprehension that the pedophiles look to get people to be blackmailed into their society, because then they can control them, and then they do whatever they want. The hackers, it's like when Apple is able to keep people out. That is like, really? Look, Apple, you weren't able to keep me out. And then they go away. And I mean, Hanford's used to that also. And then nowadays, what it gets to is like, Apple, I got in. By the way, here's how I got in. And then they usually get tech bucks or something like that for telling them what exploits and stuff. And so that's where there's kind of two different worlds of hacking. And so in the online world, the law clubs, the law people, they're still used to some sort of old Masonic cup-touching society kind of idea. And that nowadays will be throwing you right in to Moby's little tech psycho world, and most of those tech psycho worlds work off of inoculation. And so to lure in shit tons of law enforcement and judges and shit like that, that's like literally that's what builds the inoculation. It's like you get this law clerk, she didn't want anybody to see molesting a kid like a Tea Party member and shit every month and shit. She didn't want that. And so then, that's what keeps her doing what these people want. And so this is my explanation. And so the reality is that there's kind of an unspoken infrastructure based around needing those people to be keeping horrible hackers from destroying the courthouse's database and shit like that. Yeah, some of the more worst hacking offenders, these like these Mexican gangsters, they would love to pay like horrible hackers to completely destroy the court docket systems and scheduling systems and the booking systems and all that stuff at the jails and shit. And so, in lots of ways, these pedophiles are the ones that keep that stuff from happening. And so, it's difficult for. I mean, there's a courthouse in every county across the United States. I mean, you would need like a tech hacker team for every courthouse. And so there's pedophiles in every county in a tech hacker team. And that essentially, the law enforcement hasn't necessarily, well, and I mean, a lot of times these hackers are like, it's like in high school, a lot of them would have been labeled as like Columbine killer potentials. And so there's not a whole lot of love for teachers and judges and cops who go around seeing somebody's Jankos and Megadeth shirt and then they start labeling them and voyeuring them and stalking them online for being a dumb D&D nerd. So those are the people. They're the ones that now they have their death metal world where they just fuck nerdy chicks or something like that, or they suck wieners or something like that. I mean, that's basically like where it's difficult to get those people because 20 years, that's Columbine stuff. I was a 2000 graduate. I know people that the neurotic normal people at Kamaikan would have wanted all of those renegades to be voyeured and shit, and Mormons all neurotic normal. They have a weird hacking pedophile world and shit, and that they would have focused on them. And that all they would have done over the last 20 or 30 years is basically make hatred of all of those people for their incessant, like, Abercrombie and Fitch expectations. Wouldn't they love to be beautiful?